When you read stories in the Bible, it can be really hard to know what motivates the people of the Bible. For example, why do they do the things that they do? Why do they make the choices that they make? Are they motivated for good spiritual righteous reasons, or are they motivated by sinful reasons? In fact, when you read the first two chapters of Esther, it's really confusing to know what's going on in Esther's mind. Why does she do the things that she does? And through all of this, is the Bible telling us to be like Esther or to avoid Esther's mistakes? Because when you read the first two chapters of Esther, there's kind of at least two different ways that you can understand her story. One way to think about Esther is that she is a victim. She's a victim because she wasn't protected by her society. When we're introduced to King Xerxes in chapter 1, he's a pretty messed up dude. He's obviously an alcoholic. He's probably a sex addict. And chapter 1 says that after days of partying with his friends, after days of getting drunk, he sends for his queen. And during this party, when all of his friends are wasted, all these people are drunk, he wants his wife to come forward, Queen Vashti, and he wants to kind of show her off to all his friends so that all of his friends will see how beautiful that she is. And some commentators think that he actually wanted her to appear naked before all of his friends. And so we can see this is a pretty messed up dude. This is not a moral man. And so Queen Vashti refuses him, and he basically gets rid of her as queen. And so then Xerxes decides, sometime later, Xerxes decides he wants a new queen. And so what does he do? He decides that he's going to choose from all the beautiful virgins throughout Persia. The plan is he's going to bring all the beautiful Persian women together, and they're going to spend a few months living in the palace grounds, going on a royal diet, getting a makeover, and then they're going to spend one night with the king. They're going to sleep with the king, and if the king likes them, likes one of them, she'll be queen. If the king doesn't like them, well, then they're just going to kind of be, they're going to join the harem, and that's going to be it. They're never going to see the king again, and they're never going to have any kind of male companionship. And so if you see this story through this lens, now you think of Esther. And who's Esther? She's a foreigner, she is an orphan, and she is a woman. And so she's really marginalized in Persian society. And so you read the story of Esther, and Esther could be a victim. She could be a person who has really no hope in this life. She has no opportunity to make her life better. And so she's stuck in this unfortunate position. And when the king's people come through her town, her cousin Mordecai, he says, when you go to the king, when you go to the palace, don't tell them that you're a Jew. Keep that secret. And it could be that Esther is just the victim of unfortunate circumstances, that she's forced to have one frightful night with the king, and she's just a victim for all of this. And so one can read the story of Esther and see her as a victim, somebody who is oppressed and somebody who is not protected and not taken care of by our society. But there's another way to read the story of Esther, and that's to look at the story of Esther a little bit differently. That, yeah, Xerxes is still a bad guy. He's still a guy that we wouldn't trust. He's still an immoral man. But maybe Esther isn't so much a victim, but a person who's willing to make some moral compromises. Maybe she realizes that, again, she's a foreigner, she's a woman, she is an orphan. She realizes that the best chance she's going to have in life is to try and become the queen of Persia, or at least to try and get into the king's harem, because then she doesn't have to worry about anything. And maybe in this version of Esther, she is a person who doesn't really think that much about God, doesn't care that much about God. She doesn't follow God's law. That's why she's willing to sleep with the king and willing to marry him. Maybe she's not worried about following Jewish dietary laws that come from God. And she's willing to make all these compromises. She's even willing to go along with Mordecai, her cousin, and hide her identity, hide her Jewish identity in order to get ahead, in order to become the queen of Persia. And so if you see Esther in this other light, she's a person willing to make moral compromise. So which one is right? Is Esther a victim of sex trafficking and what amounts to sex slavery? Is Esther a person who's willing to make moral compromises and who really doesn't have a passionate trust and understanding of God? What should we make of Esther? Well, here's the thing. The Bible doesn't really say. The Bible doesn't really tell us what Esther's motivations were. We do know that by Esther chapter 4, Esther has become a woman who is willing to exercise faith in God. Because in Esther chapter 4, what happens is Mordecai, her cousin, comes to her and says that there's this plot to kill the Jewish people, and you need to go before the king, you need to go before the husband, and you need to plead for the freedom of the people. You need to plead, you need to ask that they would be rescued and saved. And we know that Esther, this is a tough decision for her. She doesn't know if she's going to do this, go before the king and ask that he rescues her people, because the king doesn't know she's Jewish. And by going before the king, she's putting her life into the king's hands. And so she wrestles with this, but eventually she says, okay, I'm going to go before the king, and she is exercising trust that God will rescue his people. And so in that moment, you can say, yeah, God wants us to be like Esther. He wants us to have the faith to make those morally courageous decisions. But what about Esther in chapters 1 and 2? What do we make of her? Well, the whole point of all this is to say that what the Bible does over and over again is it doesn't really put people up before us and say, here's a hero, be like them. The hero of every Bible story is God. God is the hero of every Bible story, because throughout the Bible, people make bad decisions. People make wrong decisions. And sometimes, like with Esther, we just don't even really know what she was thinking. We don't even know what her thought process was. And so the point of the Bible is not to tell us to be like Esther or to be like Moses or to be like David. Maybe you've been told to be like David in the Bible. Well, are you supposed to be like the David who's a man after God's own heart? Or are you supposed to be like the David who sent Bathsheba's husband Uriah to his death, who murdered him? Which David are you supposed to be like? And the point I'm trying to make is that God is the hero of every Bible story. He's the one that we're supposed to look to. He's the one who saves. He's the one who rescues. And so really, Esther 1 through 2, it's not so much telling us to be like Esther or not to be like Esther. It's not really condemning Esther or saying that she's a victim. The focus is on God and understanding how he uses broken, messed up people like us in broken circumstances to change the world.